From the Norman Ader and Wiggins School of Law at Campbell University, we present MoneyMasters. Hello, I'm your host, Nick Paleveda, and today our panelists are, from the world of academia, we have Dr. Boris Abbey, the Lundy Chair of the Philosophy of Business at Campbell University. From the world of business, we have Kim Calhoun, CEO and serial entrepreneur. And today's very special guest, the former World Open Chess Champion and CEO of Pegas Systems, we'd like to introduce Alan Trefler. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. It's great to be here.
Boy, I've actually known you a long time, all the way back in 1976. But you did something very special in 1975. You won the World Open Chess Championship. Tell me about that. World Open Chess Champ. You were only 19 years old.
Well,
what happened?
No one was more surprised than I was at that turn of events, I'll tell you. And in fact, it was sort of a last-minute decision that I went down with a bunch of friends. 5 of us stayed in a room in a lovely hotel in New York and put my $400 down and entered the World Open and managed to somehow ascend to the tie for the top spot there, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, who did you beat the last round to win the World Open?
A fellow named Michael Rode.
Oh, everybody knows Michael. Sure.
World Junior Champion. It was quite an exciting game, actually. It made the New York Times.
Now the thing is, you're World Open Champion of chess, which is a big thing we all know. How much money did they pay you for that World Open Chess Championship?
Well, Pal Benko and I, who split the top position, each got $2,250.
$2,250. So you're going forward in your chess career with $2,000, or did you decide to do something else?
Well, it made it pretty clear that that was not going to be the right way to go forward from a financial point of view. It wasn't the sort of thing you could count on doing every month. There wasn't even one of those tournaments every month. And you had to stay in a hotel for 5 days and pay $400 to qualify. But it was a wonderful thing to have done and actually launched me into my broader career, which was computers and software.
Okay, so you decided, forget this chess thing, I'm going to computers and software and start a public company. Was that right?
Not in one fell swoop. I mean, at the time, we were still really fascinated with the thought of trying to teach computers to play chess reasonably well.
Right.
And I was at Dartmouth College, which had a very advanced computer program at the time. The president of Dartmouth College was actually the fellow who invented the BASIC programming language. And I got pulled into working on trying to teach computers to play chess better when that was still something that seemed pretty far off. And so that really informed a lot of how I thought about actually subsequent things I did in the business world.
So how did you dream of Pegas Systems? I mean, all of a sudden, World Open Chess Championship, next thing, you're in this public company, this Pegas Systems. When did you dream this thing up?
Well, I worked in industry for a couple of years. So after I graduated, I went down and I lived in Boston, but was working, putting in computer systems at typically large, like banks in New York City. And I was pretty amazed at how stupid the whole process of writing computer software was.
Right.
You know, people would write these big specification documents, and then they'd hand them off to me and my team. We'd do what's called functional and technical decomposition. And then we'd type strange words into text files and compile them. And I thought, if we can take some of the learnings from how a chess master teaches a computer to play chess, and bring that into the software development process, maybe we can actually get business people to be much more effective at controlling their technology. And that was the original vision.
Okay, sounds like you're moving in the right direction. We're going to move to the world of academia. World of academia. You've heard Alan, and the thing is his morphing from chess into computers, into public companies. What does academia do to help encourage students to go this direction?
Well, I think it's very important in academia to teach students to think outside of the box and, more importantly, to be flexible. The economy's changed radically over the past 50 years. When my father was younger and our parents were younger, you'd get that job at a major corporation, work there for 40, 50 years and retire. And unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. Pensions are gone. The world that we live in is incredibly dynamic. Technology is rapidly changing. You have websites like MySpace, for example, that were at the top of their game in 1999, and now they're dead in the water. And in order to be successful in today's environment, young individuals must, have a diverse portfolio, and that could be chess, it could be computer programming, it could be marketing, public speaking skills. I always give my students the example of life is basically a toolbox. When you're born, you have your toolbox and it's empty. then you learn how to eat, you learn how to go to the bathroom, and over time, the more tools you put in there, for example, playing chess or learning how to code computers, program computers, or you get a little bit of marketing skills. And especially if you want to be an entrepreneur, the more tools you have in that box, the more successful you will be in the long run.
From the world of business, Kim, all of a sudden, did you have this eureka moment? He had a eureka moment when he saw the world open in chess and the money just wasn't there, and decided to go into something else, a real job with a real. When did you have your eureka moment and decide, hey, I'm going to become an entrepreneur?
I think it was after I watched the economy just keep dropping and going up, and our jobs were being outsourced in the technical industry, and I decided I wanted to bring it back home. Rebuild things here and start giving things that we need back in our community. And listening to what you're talking about, one of the things I'm learning about chess that's great, maybe in the business, if you bring that into the business world, is the strategies that you have to use. I've watched you guys play this week. It's been a true pleasure to see the game played live. And you use a lot of strategies, and a lot of risk management kind of goes into that. But that was my changing point, was I wanted to bring more jobs back to America.
Okay, great. Alan, back to Pegas Systems. What does exactly, you're the visionary for Pegas Systems, what does exactly Pegas Systems do?
Well, one way to think about what Pegas is about is think of it as sort of CAD CAM for software. Today, if you were going to be building a car, like some of our clients do at Ford or GM, they would never start the way they would have years ago with physical manifestations. Everything's done by creating a model of what you want the ultimate product to be. And today, with this model-driven architecture in the physical world, you can go directly from a concept even to 3D printing and actualizing it. Ironically, in the world of computer software, this actually isn't done. In other worlds, what people end up doing is they still do all this programming by hand. We have calls for 5 million more kids learning to computer program in those same arcane languages, very, very similar to what we used 30, 40 years ago. Our vision is that you should be able to operate at a higher level, be able to operate through metaphors that would let people engage much more effectively with their machines. And that's our vision.
So you're into engagement, customer relationship and management?
Well,
engagement?
I think it's at two levels. One is getting the business people to be able to engage differently with their software so that they can then engage differently with their customers. Computers are so central to the way that most companies engage with customers today that we really think we need to make it easier and more direct for somebody to make a change, offer a new product, tune something for a particular customer segment. And that's what our software does.
So you're in the software business and you're into software then?
We are. We have
okay. I picked up your book at the bookstore. It's called Build for Change. Everybody should read it because it makes a major difference in how you think, what you're going to do in your business. And he has some great stories like Blockbuster Video. What happened to Blockbuster Video? Did they stay on top of the change in the market space? I mean, should I get a job at Blockbuster Video today? What's the story there?
Well, as Boris was saying, we're in a world where the sort of dynamism of the market is putting pressure on even the most established brands. And organizations need to be able to build a rhythm of change into their very philosophy and into the culture of the business. And the individuals need to change, the businesses need to change, and they always need to be able to step out of the frame and understand what the next threat is. Of course, Blockbuster completely missed several opportunities to be able to become, say, the Netflix of today. And that's always an interesting shame when you see that happen.
Right, I totally agree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a job at Circuit City. I've heard of them, they're pretty good. How's Circuit City doing for me?
Well, what we've seen happen in the retail business as well as a variety of other business, financial services, no shortage of change as markets have been transformed and threatened. We see business after business that doesn't seriously understand the pressures they're going to be under and how their customers are going to have increasingly demanding and increasingly impatient reactions to how they're served. And our vision is that what's central to this is getting clients so that they can change their technology and be able to really respond through technology to what the new services are and the new products is.
But see, I don't want to change, and I want to get a job at Circuit City. And what's wrong with that right now?
Well, it would be a bit of a problem since it's not there. I mean, the death knells of these companies are more and more frequent, and that really puts pressure on businesses to be more agile, and it's hard.
Okay, I'm going to go to the world of academia. Back to school. Dr. Boris Abbey, you know, I got a big problem here. He's not letting me have a job at Circuit City and Blockbuster. I'm not really sure what's going on here because I wanted my job and steady paycheck. What can you do to help us in education in this area?
Well, I think, you know, teaching students, to, as I mentioned before, to think outside the box, and more importantly, to think forwardly. You know, as Alan mentioned and I mentioned, technology is rapidly changing. For example, when I go purchase a book nowadays, I'll go into a brick and mortar bookstore and then I'll have my phone there. And then I'll ask them if they have the book. If they don't have the book, you know, well, do you have this book? And if they do have that book, I'll look at the price, see if I can get it at a discount, and I'll go to my app. And if I really don't want to buy that book today, I'll look on my app, hit purchase, and I'll get it for 1/10 of the price online while I'm in the competitor's store. And how do you compete in an environment like that? Well, I don't have the answer to that solution, but if I were the owner or the CEO of a major book retailer, I would try to find a way to defeat that. For example, maybe have another app that would offer discounts or a similar price. Because especially when you're dealing with consumers, you better give them what they want when they want it. Because if you do not, they're going to go out and buy it from somebody else.
Mm-hmm. From the world of business, okay, my job at Circuit City looks like it's in trouble. Blockbuster, you know, Alan's not going to have a job at Blockbuster either. What can we do here? What does the world of business respond to this? It looks like change that's going on.
Well, you're going to have to build for change, as Alan wrote. And Boris brings a good point. Books were a big hit as well. Borders closed up because they didn't change with the times. And he hit a good point there. I think another good point that Alan brings up in his book is we need to start thinking more about the customer and what they want, because the visibility out there has grown too much for other competitors, and you have to know how to reach them. And Alan writes about 3 things that put companies on top. And you need to read this book and learn about that, because he is dead on what he's saying. And when you look at that, he also talks about good customer service. And I love the word that he used, customer apocalypse. I hope I nailed that. Can you explain that a little bit more for me, Alan?
Yeah, what's a customer apocalypse?
Well, you know, zombie apocalypses are very, very popular these days, and we know there could be one at any moment. A lot of customers are actually creating a customer apocalypse for the firms that they've become dissatisfied with. It used to be that if somebody was unhappy, they would, well, simply not come back, not place an order. Today, with the Yelps and the Twitters and the Facebook, there's so much tension in the system that businesses need to understand how they have to preempt adverse reactions even more powerfully than they have to even almost encourage good ones. And you're seeing businesses that are completely swayed by tides of public opinion that can be very, very difficult to overcome.
Yeah, and also in your book, and for those people who haven't seen the book, it's called Build for Change. He has a whole chapter on this part, which you have to know. You are your software. I fell out of my chair. My eyeballs popped out of my head. I was going, you are your software today. Isn't that true? You are your software.
Well, you know, it's funny because Mark Andreessen wrote a couple of years ago that software is eating the world. And when you think about it, software is pretty much the best thing you can do to capture the intelligence, the spirit, the vision of your people and your business in a leverageable fashion. Ultimately, increasingly, clients are touching companies through software, or if they're calling or going into a branch or physical location, the people in that location are completely dependent on their software to be able to provide the right service and understand and be effective in interacting with that client. And unfortunately, a lot of that software is really bad.
Oh, right. The software is really bad, which means we need to have improvements and, of course, education in the area. Dr. Boris Abbey, what are we doing about our college students when we need them to become their software programs? What sort of work are we doing? Because now today, you are your software.
Well, I think especially with the younger generation, you have to be presciently aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're doing it, because they're typically the early adopters of the majority of these software platforms. In academia, there can be a disconnect simply because of the age factor. One thing that I've always encouraged among my colleagues and also amongst my students is to go out there and actively engage students with software mechanisms. For example, a lot of the functions we use Twitter, Facebook. I friend my students on Facebook, and of course, have certain screens that are appropriate due to our relationship. But interacting with students with software, for example, we had a public debate at Campbell University. It was related to politics, and also we had a second one on race and religion. And we had students actively engaged, asking questions to the panelists using technology applications, which is great because when you have an audience of 200 people, everybody wants their voice heard. So we had a couple students up front monitoring the software with their phones, actively taking in questions, and of course you can sort the appropriate ones from the inappropriate ones. And that way you have active engagement by 200 to 300, 400 students, and it helps the communication. It also greatly assists with the learning process.
From the world of business, Kim, you're actively engaged in software, and you have some software program that's now relating to law. How does your software program work relating to legal mechanisms? Because lawyers, let me tell you, we don't like change. We don't like the software deal, and we like things in the 1800s. We're pretty happy with that. But you're doing something that seems to be a disruption in the market. What's going on?
It is a disruption, and like you said, Congress doesn't like it. And in the word of Congress, it took Congress to change it. That means it took a long time. Your tools and resources are the key to your communications nowadays, and you need good tools and resources to do that. And our software is implementing the way it communicates for law enforcement, and it's going to improve their ability to reduce response times, and that's kind of what your software tools do. They inform and provide better communications among your team so that they can communicate better with their customers. And that's very important in all of this. And it brings up a lot of other questions about what you think are important, Alan, to developing the software, and how long does it take to get the software from where you're happy with it to where the customer's happy with it. How often does the customer provide you the information you need to make it better?
Yeah, how long does it take you to put this software thing together?
Well, as a company, it takes a long time. I mean, the way I describe our firm is it took us 24 years to become an overnight success.
Right.
And one of the things I think is key is even as you're building for change and you're constantly reevaluating the marketplace, I think my advice to young people these days is sometimes persistence is the most important thing. Being able to understand when an idea should be abandoned or when you just need to work it and make it better. We had to put a lot of work in over 24 years to make it better before the business really took off.
All right, so you keep on modifying and improving the software. You just don't put a software program out and say, okay, it's good.
So it's interesting, both when we develop software for our clients and our customers figure out how to use software to make their customers happier, I think there are three things that are absolutely critical. The first is you need context. You need to be able to really understand the nuance of, well, in a customer case, what the customer really wants and needs and what their history is. And from the point of view of a company like ours, what our customers really need as well to be able to serve their clients better. After context, you need insight. You need to figure out how to distill all the different facts and circumstances to come up with an opinion. And then finally, you need muscle. You need to be able to automate or do the work so that you don't leave the customer holding the bag, as it were. So it's those three things. I kind of think of it as, in a human analogy, as being memory, as being intellect, and as being muscle. And you need that when we're working with our clients, and our customers need that when they're trying to make things easier from a service point of view for theirs.
Right. And you've been an entrepreneur like most of your life, right? Okay, what is entrepreneurs, what sort of traits do you look for in an entrepreneur to succeed?
Well, I think you need to bring together a level of innovation, a level of excitement, a level of wanting something new, but then marry that with a commitment to persistence and to having the willingness to stick things through. Because certainly from my experience, it's not easy creating something, particularly if it's going to be a bit groundbreaking. So in some ways, those two traits are almost contradictory. And I do see entrepreneurs sometimes flitting from one thing to another, and sometimes they can be very successful. But a lot of times it will take years. Think of how long it took Apple to develop. They had that thing called the Newton. Many people don't remember. That was the long ago predecessor to the iPod and the iPhone. If they just stuck with that, they never would have been anywhere. It's being willing to come back and keep working it that I think makes a big difference.
When you say never give up, would that be a fair statement?
It is, except it's wrong. Sometimes you do have to give up. Right. That's what makes it so difficult to be an entrepreneur, to get emotionally vested in your concept and really be willing to see it through and put everything on the line. But at the same time understand that sometimes that concept needs to change, needs to be radically adjusted, or just needs to be stopped. That's what's hard.
From the world of academia, we're going to talk about never giving up, and what do you see in terms of your students, in terms of traits of future entrepreneurs?
The number one trait that I look for is a strong work ethic. If you're going to go out and start a business and also seek risk, because that's what entrepreneurs do, you really have to have the backbone, the work ethic, the passion, and the desire to move forward. If you look at a lot of the entrepreneurs that have started out in America, it basically started out with an idea. These individuals, it could have been in a dorm room, it could have been in a coffee shop, but these individuals, they didn't have access to capital, they had very limited resources, but they had an idea. And they stuck to their guns and they moved forward and they did not stop until they made that dream a reality.
In the world of business, and since you're an entrepreneur, when you bring people on, what sort of traits do you look for in an entrepreneur?
I look for very similar traits that Boris was discussing about, as somebody with the passion and loyalty and good work ethics. And I'm going to tell you something, you know, coming from North Carolina and being a big fan of North Carolina State and Jim Valvano, I keep his speech on my desk about having the passion and the dream and don't ever give up. And it just resonates through you when you do this. There is a time that sometimes you do have to give up, take things off the shelf, maybe scrap and start over. But I've learned that persistence in reading your book as well is a good one, and taking pride in what you do. And I think you said that in your speech, but you didn't really say the word pride, but I read that in your speech. And,
well,
and I think it's awesome that you reflect on that, because that's important.
I do think pride in your work is enormously important. I was asked recently at a presentation what I thought the number one thing that kids should do when they enter the workforce. And I told them I thought it was important that they do something they can be proud of, and that they understand that, you know, it's not about making money. It's not about just doing what you're asked or getting that paycheck. It really has to be about doing something that you feel that your working life, which is such a big part of how we spend our time and bring things to society, is actually adding to the pie in some way. And so I do think pride in your work is ultimately perhaps the most important characteristic, as long as it, you know, doesn't blind you to the great work other people are doing.
Now, Alan, you've been successful in 3 different areas. You were the World Open Chess Champion. You started a public company, which a lot of people start and then they let somebody else run it. But you also run a public company. So could you tell me, if we were to give 3 pieces of advice to our audience, what would be the 3 most important things you could give as takeaways to the people listening to the show?
Well, I think one of them would have to do with the persistence and pride and desire to do something special, and commitment to that, which we've talked about it with underlies it. You know, I think the second thing I'll tell you is that you have to always be working and learning. And to tell you the truth, I didn't always run the company. There was a period of time when I felt that for about 5 years, I felt I hadn't done a good job. And I stepped back. I actually went back into the engine room, as it were, returned to some of my software design roots, and brought in some senior managers who really, I think, helped us learn how to be a much more effective firm, how to be a good public company, which was something that when we entered, we frankly were a bit naive about, and was a very, very rigorous learning curve for us. And then understanding when it was time to step back in and really help lead the firm through this great period of growth we've had over the last 9 years.
That's great. Okay, so what we have is some really good advice from a top-level executive in the area of computers and tech. So I'd like to thank you for viewing Money Masters. I would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Boris Abbey, Professor Boris Abbey, as we well know, Kim Calhoun, our serial entrepreneur and CEO, and of course our very special guest, Alan Trefler, World Open Chess Champion, founder and CEO of Pegas Systems. Thank you, Alan, for coming to Money Masters.
Thank you, Nick. A pleasure.
Take my hand and let's go to Tupelo. Let's take some time on a highway drive, a few miles, take it what you know about television.